Welcome to Praise Divine Bible Study. We'll be treating the book of First Kings, chapter 1 to verse 53 today. So I'm just going to go straight right in. The author of this book is unknown, although some people have said it could have been Jeremiah, but we're not sure. And it was written at that time for the people of Israel. And the purpose is to show us the lives of those who live for God and those who refuse to do so through the history of the kings of Israel and Judah. And this is also written for us to learn from their mistakes. So I'm just going to go right in. And I'm not going to be reading each verses just to save our times. So if you have a Bible, let's go right in. So I'm going to start from verse 1 to 4. And the verse here, King David was about 70 years old at this time, and we were told he was old and his health was deteriorating at this time. And then we were told that he had so many clothing, yet he had no warmth. And then one of his servants had suggested to him to get a virgin to keep him warm. And then they got Abishag, and then so she served the king and kept the king warm. But then in verse 4, we were told that the king knew her not. So in this sense, there was no sexual relations between them. Now, let's keep in mind that in the Old Testament, it was okay to have many wives. It was okay to be polygamy, and it wasn't a sin or anything. So he taking up a virgin, like marrying somebody else, wasn't considered a sin at that time. And then, so moving further, I'm just going to give us a brief I'm just going to tell us briefly about the sons of David. And David's first son is his name is Amnon, and he had been killed by Absalom for raping his sister. And I don't know if you read through the book of 2 Samuel, but you can find it in 2 Samuel chapter 13. You can read that personally. And the second son, his name is Daniel, and it was mentioned once in the book of First Chronicles chapter 3. And he had probably died at this time. We're not sure about, we don't really know much about him. Then his third son is Absalom. He died in an earlier rebellion, and we can see this in 2 Samuel chapter 18. Now, Adonijah is his fourth son. So logically, his son should be his successor, but God and David, they had a different plan, right? Now we can see going forward, if you're reading like verse 5 to 23, this is when Adonijah knew Solomon was the chosen one, so he decided to seize the throne without David's knowledge. Like Adonijah was rebellion, and then he was like, I'm going to be the king. At this point, it was like, I don't care if you want to make me the king or not, but I am going to be the king. And then he had invited the king's son. He had invited some priests, right? And then he didn't invite Solomon and David's loyal advisors. Now, Nathan the prophet and the priest to make sure Solomon rode in his mule. Now again, mule were expensive animal, and they were ridden by wealthy and powerful people. And David also instructed them to anoint Solomon with the tabernacle oil. Now the tabernacle oil was used to anoint Israel's king and high priest, right, and as well as to dedicate certain objects to God. So this is just to show that yes, this is actually the king. This is the person that deserves the throne. So they followed, they followed this instruction. And then while they were doing all this, because he had said, let there be sound, like I'm emerged. Like I imagine, like the noise must have been so much, because at the same time, around that period, Adonijah was also doing his own thing, trying to make himself the king, right? And then so one of the servants, as we can see, went to give Adonijah this news, like something else is happening. They've made Solomon the king. and that's where the noise is coming from. Now everybody was scared, everybody left. Now Adonijah was scared, and then he went to the altar. Now this altar signifies his mercy and forgiveness. So he thought going to this altar is going to save him, because he knew Solomon was going to kill him, because literally what he did was an offense to Solomon, basically, because it's like a rebellious thing, right? So then he was fearful for himself. Then he went there. But the most interesting thing was that Solomon forgave him. Solomon let him go. Solomon was like, and that's actually a very, very something interesting, right? And just what I learned from this chapter is, first, from Nathan's action, is when you have the chance to be involved in something, to do something, like do it, like don't be scared, because Nathan, he took action. He fought for Solomon, in a way. And then it's like, as a Christian too, in our day-to-day life, if we can help somebody, if we can fight, give somebody's voice, someone that doesn't have a voice, you give the person's voice, that was really interesting. And then now I'm just going to go back right into verse, I think that's like verse 6, where it talks about King David not questioning Adonijah. And then that's also very important, because as a Christian we need to train, for mothers or for fathers, for parents generally. Training a kid in the right way is really important. You need to question them, you need to discipline them, So this sacrifice, which is also called peace offering, were usually offered when a new king was anointed. Now, to legitimize his takeover, Adonijah had to do this sacrifice. So he wants to show the nation that, because really the reason for the sacrifices is just to show that the king's power was from God. So Adonijah had to do that because he wanted to take over his throne. And then we can see going further, like Nathan the prophet, he found out what Adonijah was doing. Then he went to Bathsheba, which is Solomon's mother, and then it was like, are you seeing what's going on, like what Adonijah is doing and all that? So Nathan had told Bathsheba, Solomon's mom, to go meet King David. And then Nathan too, he also went to bow to King David, and then he told King David about what Adonijah was plotting and how he has made himself the king and he didn't invite him and all that. So David requested to call Bathsheba, and then he told Bathsheba that Solomon is going to reign in his stead. Solomon is going to take over his throne, right? Yes, God has called you to a certain thing. Don't, because I'm working for God or this and that, and then neglect your children or neglect your family and not do your duty. It is really important. Just the same way we are doing God's work, we also need to watch over our kids, for those that have kids and everything like that. So those were like one of the really important thing that I actually learned. And then seeking God's guidance before you take an action, that is very, very important, because we can see that in Adonijah, taking things by himself, because sometimes God's plan is different from your plan. So you really don't lean on your own understanding, let God take charge of everything. And again, Nathan was a man of both faith and action. He took the action at the right time. He was like, I need to do this, and he did it. It was good. And then being rebellious is going to cost you. And it makes the situation worse. Just like Adonijah running fearful for his life. He knew what he did was wrong. Like, we didn't have to do it to begin with, right? So again, thank you very much, guys, for listening. Let me know what you guys learned from this book. Have you read this book? Is this your first time reading this book? Did you like the story? Let me know in the